It is Friday at the Revere Beach National Sand Sculpting Festival. The centerpiece is wrapping up. We're just working on some last-minute logos. The sculptors are really progressing since the last time we looked at them, which was yesterday. What we're going to do now is we're going to go around and see what they have done since the last time we checked in. We are at Bob's piece. Yesterday when we looked at this piece, he hadn't done any of the cut-throughs. And I was mentioning that I had seen his sketch and that it would be cut through. So that's what he's doing now. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the ribs are totally cut through, and it looks like that fish on the inside is probably going to be free from the sides of the ribs. I'm not sure yet. We'll see what he does with that. And you can also see how he has cleaned up the top, but he's still working on the bottom where you can see pit marks. Those will all have to be filled in. You know, that counts as cleanliness, quality of carving, and the overall finish of the piece. So as he goes down and he finishes an area, he'll fill in all those little pit marks to make it as smooth as the top. Oh wow, yeah, okay. Here we are on the back side. And a lot more detail on this side. Yeah, that's nice. He did free the fish from the ribs. When you look in on the side, you can see it's totally separate from the ribs on the inside. And he's doing exactly what I was talking about on the other side. He's taking off. Now you can see this side doesn't have any of those pit marks. So he's working on finishing this side and then go around to the other side. And it's really important, you know, he's spending as much time on detailing cleanliness on the back of the sculpture as he is on the front. And, you know, like I said before, that is one of the things that they get judged on. How you doing, Chris? Chris, you had a little collapse this morning, didn't you? Right before lunch, or did you lose a couple of hours?
Back here, so I had a small collapse. I was in the zone today totally, so I just kept carving. And when I'm in the zone, I guess most of us are just safety precautions are out the window. So I wasn't looking. I just kept carving. And
yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. You get into something and you get lost in the moment. Oh, yeah. And if you don't stand back and look at it, it's really important. You'll see some of these artists, they'll get down off the forms, they'll stand back, they'll go up to it, they'll come back, they'll stand back. You're right on top of it while you're carving the whole time, so it's really important to step back and get a different perspective of what they're doing, or they lose the sense of proportion if they don't step back and take a look at what they're doing every now and then. But like he said, he got wrapped up in it and lost a leg. He does have the cut-throughs going all the way through. If you look at it from the front, you can see the air coming out the back. So he's just moving right along. I think this is the first time I've looked at it from the side like this.
Right.
Wow, that is so sheer. And it's sheer with weight on the top of it too. It's not going up to a point, you know, like the peak of a castle where the weight is evenly distributed. This is going up tall, and if you walk around to the front of it, it's 2 towers. I'm not really sure what you'd call it. 2 structures that there's quite a bit of weight up there. Oh, and yeah, wow. He's given the illusion that this bar is going right through these 2 towers, and it looks like I think he might have a second one coming out down here at the bottom. I'm not sure. But, you know, when you get down to these bottom forms, you can see in the front down here where it's really dark down here as opposed to a little bit different color up here. And that's because that down at the bottom is still wet. And you have to be careful that you don't carve away too much and it gets like gooey, where it can actually be a problem if it's too soft. You'll also notice that Dan has a wire right here coming out of the front of it. That has to come out. In the rules, they can band their forms together, they can wire them together, they can do whatever they want to keep the forms together, but it has to come out. So he will pull that piece of wire out of there at some point. And the reason he used a band where a wire where you'll see some of the other sculptors didn't, is because his piece, the bottom form, is long and narrow. So when you have something long and narrow, you have to wire it or band it to keep it from bowing out and popping your forms. There's so much weight down on that bottom form. Oh, Susie McGruzy. Oh yes, Sue was contemplating her piece this morning. We were talking about it, and she was saying, I don't like it, it's bothering me, I want that halo to be round. And ta-da, lo and behold, she made it round. It looks nice. Yeah, it's more symmetrical. What she had to do for that, though, is she had the wings coming out a little bit farther, overlapping, and she stood back at it last night when she was finished, and she thought about it all night, and she's like, I just wouldn't be happy with myself if I don't round it, because I'm not really thrilled or pleased with it. So that's what they do. They'll change things halfway through, all the way through. They get down to the very bottom and decide to add something to it. It's very they feel it as they're going along, and something may make sense and something doesn't, so they have the ability to change it. She's got her wings going, some nice detail on the wings. You can see they're like a little bit whiter than the rest of the sculpture, and that's because they're delicate and she might have added those on, which means they're not part of the original pound up. So they tend to be a little bit lighter in color, but it's kind of cool because it makes it look like feathers. And I know Sue, this will have a beautiful face on this side of it. She does some incredible faces. Oh, what has she got going here? This looks like a sickle. I think this is going to be the bad angel, not the good angel. See the sickle? That's a different take on an angel. That's, that'll help her with originality and creativity by taking a subject matter that we see, we see a bit of angels in sand sculpture, but she's doing something out of the box with the angel. So that will probably help her when it comes to artistic impression and creativity. She has all her forms off, and I don't see any stress fractures at all, so looks like she's safe as far as that goes. You can see the layers in the bottom form, where she's taken the form off, the colors. That's from just the process of doing the pound up, sand, water, sand, water, sand, water. It kind of settles a little bit at a time, and those were her layers when she was doing her pound up. Now, I didn't see that coming, the hole in the stomach. That was not there yesterday. And if I know Benjamin, I'm sure this is referring to the woman and probably fertility, and probably his meaning behind it, and this is just a guess, is she's maybe without child, or she can't have a child, or somebody's taken her child from her. It's a feeling that he is... It's his design, and only he can interpret it the way he meant it. But as a viewer, you're allowed to interpret it any way you want. That's the beauty of the art. Okay, looks like on this side here, what he's doing is we talked about his hands yesterday hanging over the edges, and I was wondering how he was going to undercut it, if he was going to undercut it. And what he did was he cleverly morphed the hand into tree, probably tree of life. It's interesting to talk to the artist after you look at the piece and you think you know what they're doing or what they're trying to get across or interpret, and then it might be a totally different meaning to the artist. So at some point we'll talk to Benjamin and see what he has going on here. Oh, yeah. Okay, I hadn't seen the back at all, so I'm thinking my guess has something to do with no child, or again, we'll find out, but the teardrop on the eye is symbolic of something, and I'm sure it's got to do with the womb, no child in the womb. Okay, we're back with Justin, and he's come a long way since yesterday. Yesterday, just the one face on the left was smoothed and cleaned. Now the other two are almost complete. You'll notice in the top of the sculptures, he has a piece of wire sticking out of the two heads on the left. And the reason that wire is there is to, the birds land on the sculptures. And that's not what hurts the sculpture, but it's when the bird takes off and their talons dig into the sculpture when they're taking off. So you'll notice some of the sculptures that have a fine detail on the top will put a piece of wire and it keeps the seagulls off the sculptures. Now this is what I was talking about. This is a perfect example of a cut through having to make sense. Justin has cut through. These are difficult. He has a lot of weight up on top, and not only, if you look at the two figures on the left, not only is it cut through, but the cut under the left man's hair is getting wider. and the one under the ear and under the chin is getting wider. So it's not just your typical arch. And he has the hair and the two scarves and the ear and the chin all figured into that cut through. So that's a cut through that makes sense, and it has to be there, and there's a purpose and a reason for it. It's actually part of the sculpture. You can see on the back of Justin's sculpture all the sand blowing, and that's because it is very dry and very hot. The sun is out, and those are actually the most difficult conditions for the sculptors to work in, because everything dries so fast. It's uncomfortable to breathe the dry sand, and they have to really stay on top of it and keep the sculptures wet. He's not working on the back right now, so he doesn't need to keep it wet right now. When he comes around here to do the backside, he'll have to spray that all down. Okay, we're at Steve Tapazio's piece, and I was right that it was some type of a headdress, and now you can see the rest of the face coming out. Let's walk around. I wonder if it's some type of a mask. I'm not sure what he has planned for it. But you'll notice as they get to the bottom, there's a lot of sand to move, and they have to either sculpt that sand or move it or make it part of their sculpture. He's got a lot of blocking out on the back, but he is doing 360, so you do have to carve the whole piece. That's one of the things that they're judged on, is the whole piece carved. Here we are with Joby again, and I'm going to make a little funny and say Joe B, because I'm pretty sure this is a bee. Curled up upside down bee. You never know what Joby is going to do. It's kind of crazy. Wow. Here's another one with those cut throughs that I was talking about, the legs on the side where it has to make sense. Those cut throughs have to be in the right place. And yeah, he's 360. He's getting a lot of detail on the back as well. Oh yeah, oh wow. Look at this. Some nice features right there. And he'll probably mimic that on the other side. That's nice. I think what some of the sculptors do is they'll have a tendency to do the back detail first and make sure that they like it and then mimic it on the front. And also it gives them kind of a mental thing to speed up, because if you spend too much time on the front, then you run out of time, and it's like, oh, I don't have time to finish the back, and that's part of the criteria. So if you start on the back side, then you're forced to just keep up your pace and get to the front with plenty enough time to complete the front. Nice. It looks. See what he's done with texture right here on this. He's just taken a little tool and picked out sand to make it look like it has hair on it. Can't wait to see what he does with the eyes. I bet they're going to be creative. You know, when we were talking to Joby in his interview, he stressed that his piece is, he tries to get a message across. Doesn't try to, he does. And it's usually got to do with environment or some type of animal. Last year he did the turtle, that they were becoming extinct. And the year before that, the fish, that we're fishing ourselves out of fish. This probably has something to do with the honeybees and it's probably something to do with the threat to the honeybee population, and that they probably will be becoming extinct, the honeybee. We'll see. We'll see where he's going with it. Nice job. And this is Dan Belcher. Now you can see on the back here, it's really hard to get this sand really smooth with no marks, no trowel marks in it. And one of the things that they're judged on is the quality of the finish, or the finish itself, is did they leave trowel marks where there shouldn't be any, and are there marks where there should? And this is an example of what it should look like, you know, the back where it's all nice and smooth. And it's kind of tough because it's got direct lighting on it too, which really shows everything. The direct lighting shows everything. You can see up at the top how clean the back of that is. It's really nice. One of the things the sculptors take into consideration when they're setting up their forms is the lighting at judging time. I'm wondering if we can get a minute from Dan to talk about lighting. Dan, do you have a second?
Sorry?
Would you like to talk to us a little bit about lighting and how you place your forms to maximize that?
Yeah, well, that's one of those things you think about and you don't really pay too much attention to until you screw that one up, which I did about 4 years ago. I just happened to make my my A side directly facing the sun at like 2 o'clock, so it washed out all the shadows and all the faces I had done. So it really minimized all my efforts. So Yeah, it's one of those things that just even thinking of on the first day, looking at the sun angle at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and making sure that I wasn't facing that direction, making sure I angled my piece a little bit, and it really helps me too, so that, let's say at the end of the day, I'm not carving with the sun directly into my detail, and I'm trying to carve a face, and I'm trying to get shadows, and I'm digging deeper. You do that, and then you come back the next day, and it's, oh my God, what did I do?
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I've done it so many times. So, but and then this too. It's with the constant changing light. It changes all the time. I know we were working on the Red Sox players. Every 10 minutes it would change, and you have to change the face. You realize different angles, can really make some big differences.
Amazing job on the baseball cards, by the way.
Oh well, thanks. Yeah, that was fun. That was a blast. And not without his critiques. I had one guy who really told me, hey, that Ted Williams does not look like Ted Williams. I'm like, well, 3 hours. I'm trying to do my best, but I put a little more time into it. You got to be able to take a little critique. So.
Well, you were fortunate this year. You got to come in early and play with the sand up on the centerpiece.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me to come in and work on that pile. It really helps because this is such an idiosyncratic sand. It has certain properties that so many other sands don't, and you forget what it does and what it doesn't do. And it's so nice to be able to play with that a couple days before the contest starts, because learning it on the first day of carving is it's just so nerve-wracking. Yeah.
Well, it looks great, Dan. You are definitely playing to the light. Your shadows are popping.
Well, thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing it come along.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Oh, Matt's moving right along here. Now, I heard Matt talking to somebody at lunchtime, and this is, I'm not familiar with the movie, but Matt, is it Tron? Is that what you're saying? The movie Tron? The movie Tron? Was that? No?
Dune.
Oh, Dune.
Dune. Frank
Okay.
Dune.
Okay. All right. I'm not familiar with it, and
This is Little 2, the Lord Emperor.
okay, well, you will have some fans if they know their characters there. That's look at the tail. Okay, yep, sci-fi. There you go. He's got some life into it. The tail kind of moving and curving, and it's always nice to see movement in a sculpture. It's probably one of the hardest things to get, is that movement and that feeling of emotion through the movement. He's got a lot of surface sculpted. He's getting there. He's working right along.
Looks good, right? Fantastic. It's Chris. This is really actually hard. God dang it. Chris, I think I'm done.
How can you ask to team up with greatness like this and you can't even carve a freaking
Actually,
apple?
you asked to team up with me, so you asked to team with greatness.
What?
Yeah.
That's
Don't let camera don't get fooled like this. Keep on.
camera is not full. The camera picks up what's going on for real. Okay.
Obviously.
And this is really happening.
They understand that you're lying.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they do. They understand you're lying. Chris, this really looks like you. I'm even gonna make your body.
Oh, baby, you ain't got enough snow on the beach for these pythons to carve out of. You can't do that.
They
I stand on the beach for the
pythons in the egg still. The pythons that are in the egg still. Yeah, exactly.
I can't even feel it.
Because you're speechless.
Because I'm trying to become a champion. Okay.
It's hard to be a champion when you can't win.
Listen, you got Magellan,
Magellan.
Columbus, Armstrong, Ginto. I got a little bit of name.
That's double day.
What?
Double day. Not Ginto. Two different spellings, but you wouldn't know because you read the short ones.
You want to know the class of people you fall under?
What?
Charlie Brown, Bozo the Clown,
Are they famous?
Scooter, or
Are they
Cooter
famous?
from Dukes of Hazzard.
Are they famous?
No, Enos, sorry. You're
Are
more
they
Enos.
famous? Are you famous, Chris?
You'll see.
Okay, but are you
People
famous?
so weak
You just
when they
compared
see
me to
you.
famous people.
What?
You did.
Whatever. Things are going to change.
Chris,
Certain
next
stuff is going to change around here, young Jedi.
Jedi? Chris, I'll even give you a six-pack.
What are you? Oh, you carving? Is that me? Oh, you're funny. You're a comedian. You ought to be stand-up. You ought to be stand-up.
You're gonna be ripped out. Holy crap, I messed up. about to be ripped out, Chris.